Hi, I'm Antonia. This is Universally Me. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Antonia Carlotta, and check out my Patreon where I post behind the scenes content plus pictures and memorabilia from my family's private collection. I've had this video in the works for a while now, but it's been a little bit weird to make. Not because it's sad or anything, like owning Universal is never a life that I've known. I'm not some heiress like Paris Hilton. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't sometimes wonder what my life would be if my family did still own Universal. I guess there's also kind of the fact that maybe they shouldn't have lost Universal, which I'll get into later in the video. This is one of the questions that I get asked the most, so I figured it was time that I put it all out there. So this video is how my family lost Universal Studios. If you watch my videos, you know Universal Studios was started by my uncle Carl Laemmle in 1912. He was a German immigrant who came to the United States in search of the American dream. He worked all sorts of odd jobs before finally getting into the film industry at 40 years old, when he had a wife and 2 kids. He started by owning theaters, then went into distribution, and finally production. A ton of my relatives lived and worked on the Universal lot over the years. Even now, when I think that I figured out everyone that ever worked there, I'll still stumble upon another picture or another IMDb page with another relative's name. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty cool. We now think of Universal to be this giant conglomerate that's owned by Comcast, but in the Laemmle era, it was very much a family business. A great example of this is Carl's son, Junior. Junior grew up on the Universal lot and started going to meetings with his dad when he was just a little kid. For his 21st birthday, Carl gave his son control of the studio. Some people at the time said that this was nepotism, which, yeah, in some ways it was. But there was also probably nobody more qualified in the industry than Junior. When Carl ran Universal, the trend was largely to put out as many films as possible. But when Junior took over, he wanted to change that. Right off the bat, he spent a ton of money. He bought theaters, he converted the studio for sound, and he invested in big, lavish Technicolor productions. Junior wanted to spend more money on fewer but better quality films. This was brilliant in some ways. He made some really great movies, and when those movies did great, they did great, but it was also risky. So when his movies flopped, they really flopped. We can see where Junior's filmmaking paid off. He made movies like All Quiet on the Western Front, Imitation of Life, Waterloo Bridge, the 30s monster movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Invisible Man. Because of those monster movies, Universal was one of the only studios not to record a loss during the Great Depression. In 1935, Universal went into debt for the first time. Carl Laemmle actually looked to sell the studio around this time, but no one could afford it. So, Universal kept on. Overlapping film productions only added fuel to the fire. They made Magnificent Obsession and Sutter's Gold, which both cost a boatload and both went over schedule. Sutter's Gold in particular was a disaster upon release. And then came Showboat. And this is the movie that we cite most often as the movie that lost the studio. Where Carl Laemmle never borrowed money, Junior was more willing to take that gamble. Junior really believed in the movies they were making, so he convinced his dad to take out a $750,000 loan with Standard Capital, a Wall Street firm that was run by a man named J. Cheever Cowden. They had 90 days to pay back the loan, or Standard Capital would have the option to buy Universal for $5.5 million, which would be over $100 million today. I've read some accounts that Carl Laemmle Sr., quite the gambler himself, didn't believe that Standard Capital would really be able to raise the money to buy the studio. But Showboat went over time and over budgets. Standard Capital didn't have to call the loan in, but they actually did find the money and they saw an opportunity and they took it. Carl Laemmle was paid out, and after more than 30 years in the industry, he stepped down as president. Junior, too, asked to be released from his contract as he knew the new owners were probably not going to welcome him. What's even more painful is that when Showboat came out, it was a huge success, and if they just had more time, everything could have been different. And well, that's basically the story. After Universal, Carl Laemmle Sr. devoted all of his time and money to sponsoring Jewish refugees to come to the United States as Hitler rose to power. And Jr. supported his father however he could, and also became quite the bachelor around Los Angeles. Now, obviously, I don't think that I would be too sad if I were born Antonia Universal, heiress to the park, raised to run the studio with my family with hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. Yeah, that would be great. But I'm still grateful for the life that I get to have now and that Universal gets to be a part of my history. If I were raised the other way, I don't know if I would have the same appreciation for it that I do now. And, you know, my life is still pretty great. Don't forget to check out my Patreon where I've got pictures and videos and more information that didn't make it in this video. Don't forget to check out my Instagram and my Twitter at Antonia Carlotta. Thank you. Bye.